Okay, and the big clock up on the wall tells us it's time to start. Welcome to Göteborg, welcome to Sweden, and welcome to Conference Room E. We were moved around a couple of times, but glad you made it. My name is Erik, and I'm one of the many people who has submitted a logo for the Apache Flex logo contest. You can see it, it's projected up on the big screens here behind me and on the big screen to my left. The reason I have asked all of you to come and join me here on this day of snowfall is to tell you the story behind the logo and tell you the story of Apache Flex from my point of view. And I really hope that it's your point of view as well. Most logo types are a two-part story. There is the logo, some graphics, a mark, an image of some kind, and then there is the type, which is a word or name associated with the logo. Together, they're the logo type. And these two parts, to me, suggests that there will always be layers associated with the logo, associated with your brand. Some people will have a more shallow engagement in your brand, in your story than others, and that's fine. Not everyone can have exactly the same needs, experience the world in the exact same way, but it makes us we need to talk about branding, about logotypes in layers. We need to make sure there is enough room there for everyone, for different levels of engagement. So a layered discussion about this logo is what we will do. First, we'll discuss the logo itself, and at the end I will try to paint you a bigger picture of how I envision this logo to be used. So, chapter 1, the logo. If we just saw this piece of graphic on a website or on someone's t-shirt, t-shirts are the suits of programmers, so it will eventually end up on a t-shirt. What would it tell us? In an offline setting, this is usually a good time to just gel the floor and to have people raise their hand and tell me what they see in the mark, tell me their first impressions. But we can't do that here, so it will be just me trying to speak out of my own head for a while and looking at this as someone might see it for the first time. And the first thing that I would notice is there is some sort of connectivity going on. We have this centralized node connecting to these other nodes encircling it, and if that is the case, then I believe that indeed may be a good image for Apache Flex to portray. Flex is trying to address a situation of chaos. It's a party out there, and front-end user experience is a party gone out of control. There are multiple screens, multiple platforms, multiple use cases, companies suing each other, and it's a party. And I don't want to be the one who says the party must stop, but speaking as a single developer, it's really hard to deliver a consistent story across all of these different choices. And I would be willing to compromise on some things if that means that I could have the big parts behave in a consistent manner across multiple screens and platforms and apps and so on. And I believe that connectivity is one of the core arguments for approaching Flex. You can learn one skill set and be okay on most platforms. And Flex could also help you to leverage benefits on one platform on multiple other platforms. So it's a great argument. And of course, to Flex, connectivity has many parts to it. One of the most important differences between, say, Flex and ActionScript versus HTML and JavaScript is how objects connect to each other. Should objects be classes or prototypes? Should we listen to Plato or Wittgenstein? I know ActionScript has prototypes as well, but we mainly use classes in ActionScript. And maybe that's something we need to talk about. Talking about connectivity, we could also view this mark as a pictogram of our new community. Apache Flex is now under an open sourced model, and you can connect with the framework. We can influence its directions. We can make it do new things, and that is really good because we can now build the framework that we need, that we want. Okay, from the outside of my own head, I would say that this logo is about connectivity, but showing the mark to other people, they have seen other things. Someone asked me if it was a clock, and well, maybe. If they see it as a clock, that I would be fine with it because it's a new time for Flex, and turnaround times in the software industry is really important. And we want Flex to help developers be more effective in less time. So maybe it is a clock. Others, at a time where I had the nodes positioned slightly different, asked me if it was a small stick man, because it looked like the cartoon of a man. And maybe, well, if you tilt your head, maybe it could be a stick man. And that would also be great because Flex should care about its people. It should care about end users. It should care about developers. It should care about the needs of managers. So maybe it is a stick man. Some said it's a star, and maybe it is. I would probably say it's a spark to have it connect with a commonly used namespace in the framework. But what I'm trying to tell you is that at this level and at this level of abstraction, you can interpret the mark in many different ways. And we need to take our audiences by the hand and lead them to deeper layers of the logo to help them understand what it is that they are really seeing. And just to keep you on your toes, I won't tell you what it is you're really seeing until the very end of my talk. Sorry, only those worthy of knowledge shall know, I guess. As a side note, seeing this graphics, a friend of mine told me he thought it may be too complex as a logo, and a logo should be really, really simple. And I agree with him. A logo must be simple because it needs to communicate fast. But I don't think that simple is the same thing as trivial. We sell tool for building complex abstractions of the world, and maybe some of that complexity should be communicated by the logo because it's just what we do. It's our business. The important thing is that the mark can be used in many different situations, and I believe this logo can be used that way. Here's it on a t-shirt, here it is in a Twitter feed, and I believe that it can scale up and down, and it works. So going deeper, next chapter, the type. And I won't speak too much about it, except to say that this is still a pitch. And if the pitch is chosen, there will probably be more discussions and tweaks to be made. For instance, I'm not sure if the Flex F should be custom drawn like it is now. The reason I did it is sort of, well, it's a tribute to Flash actually. And people may love Flash and people may hate Flash, but Flash is the history of Flex, and I just believe in acknowledging that acknowledging history is good. For better or worse, you can't escape it. So the best thing you can do is to learn from it. And one of my friends also asked me if I had lost all of my colors, or why all the elements of the logotype were in black and white. And my only response to that is that this is still a pitch. There will be tweaks, and maybe we should colorize the logo. But then we must discuss, I believe, the concept of friends and foes. Who do we want to be friends with, and who do we want to compete with? Because that may influence the colors we should choose and how we should use them. Okay, the third chapter, the composition. And of course, this is also something that may need to be tweaked later on. Maybe the use cases for the logo are so diverse that we must allow the logotype to figure in many different compositions. Or maybe there should be only one. We need to talk about that a bit more, but this is just one of the many possibilities to combine the elements. Here I've combined them to make room for something like a tagline or a slogan or a payoff of some kind. And don't pay too much attention to the actual slogan. It's just a placeholder for whatever the community decides it wants to communicate in later on, but it's there just to show that something like that could be incorporated in the logotype. Okay, so how are we all doing? Are you all still with me? Okay, great. Because this last section of my presentation may be a bit abstract, but I believe it's important because it may help us to use the logo and allow it to help us actually do the thing that it must do. It must help us to communicate. That is its purpose. As I designed this logo, I found myself laying awake at night thinking about it, and the reason wasn't that it was so much harder to do than other logos, but because I felt that there was a bigger problem that we needed to solve. As a developer, I have pondered the web many times, searching for frameworks, and I'm sure you have too. And in doing this, I always hope to find something that in the end will save me some time and save me some knowledge. But somehow the process of searching for a framework always ends up costing me both, and that really bugs me because that was not the promise of object-oriented software. And I'm not the most technical guy in the room, so I won't go into technical details why framework usage is hard. I'll keep to what I know, but I believe that part of this problem is communication and too abstract branding of frameworks. And as I lay awake there in the dark in my room, I asked myself, is there a better way to do this? Could Apache Flex do it better? And I believe we can do it better. But I need to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I stood sideline at a big political summit. And at the end of the day, hard decisions had to be made by this room, but things just went nowhere. The meeting was held for important reasons, but it just got nowhere. Discussions deadlocked, and for several hours, no progress was being made at all. Uh, Finally, a committee chairman asked for the floor, and he stands up and tells the room a Winnie the Pooh story. And here and there, he compared different politicians in the room with the characters in the story. A left winger was Tigger, and some right winger was Rabbit. He himself was Piglet, as I recall it. And we who watched from the sidelines at first could not understand what the guy was talking about. But as it turned out, the guy did know what he was doing. Because as he sat down, the deadlock had magically been broken. People actually started to talk with each other, and for the next hour or so, there was real progress being made, and it turned out to be a great day with people just hugging and children laughing and music playing and peace and love in the world again. Uh, but for the sake of user experiences everywhere, I want what the committee chairman wanted for his nation. I want there to be progress in the field, and I want to present Apache Flex users with real world value. And I believe that sometimes you need to communicate in a new way for that to happen. Sometimes Apache Flex will need its own Winnie the Pooh story, and it's our job to find it, and sooner rather than later, because I believe it could really help us. So the question we must ask ourselves is, why was the committee chairman's story about Winnie the Pooh such a success? And I want to highlight two things. Uh, at first, the story helped the room to, in the midst of this complex, abstract problem solving process, they started to think with their whole brains again. The story and the characters connected them with emotions, with imagination, and maybe it made them recall memories of holding fluffy bears in their hands. And if we ask the neurologists, they will tell us that the brain is at its best when multiple subsystems of the brain can interact to solve a complex problem. Being a whole brain is simply what the brain likes and does best. And second reason I believe the story actually worked was because just by offering this new shared harmless story to the room, the chairman had created a new arena for discussion and debate. And since everybody knew the stories of Winnie and probably had positive associations connected with stories, uh, everyone could and everyone dared to enter this new arena. And using the stories, they could try out new ideas because they could hide themselves behind the characters in the stories. They could say, well, if I really am Piglet, then maybe I just should, or Tigger might do so and so, and if they realized that a certain topic or commitment had carried them too far from their own real safe zone, they could just escape the character and be themselves again, and they had not committed to anything. Uh, so how is all of this relevant to Apache Flex? Um, well, let us be clear. The tasks ahead for Apache Flex are most likely complicated, abstract tasks. And I fear that trying to solve them may lead us to spend too much time in too few parts of our brains for our own good. I mean, just ask Albert Einstein, and he will tell you that imagination is equal to math. And I'm not trying to tell you that we should sit down and tell each other kid stories instead of algorithms, just because that was what the guy in the story did. But I do suggest that we find ourselves a concrete domain, some real world collection of metaphors, because I believe they could help us, just like Winnie helped the politicians in my story. Uh, so, what real world domain, what concrete metaphor could be suitable for Apache Flex? Uh, Flex will be a project hopefully employing people from all around the world, so the domain employed should be a universal one, something that many people may have experienced in a similar way. And the first and the first domain I thought about was the human body, because the word flex points in that direction already. To flex is to use your body, to use your muscles, to bend your limbs. Um, but I could not get it to work because the body is, I believe, just too capable. The metaphors just became a bit too weak to be helpful, in my opinion. Um, just as an example, take Flex Mobile. Is Flex Mobile the feet of Flex? Is it its hands, its arms? Is it its voice? Um, well, I pressed on, and maybe we could relate Flex to nature or to animals, to the gym or to an office, or I believe my best idea came to me the next morning as I read an email on the Flex developers mailing list talking about forks. And I realized that the software industry already uses a lot of words from the kitchen domain or from the cooking domain. I mean, you fork code, and collections of programming examples are often called cookbooks. Uh, Apache Flex have the support of an organization calling itself Spoon. Uh, and as I went to look around my own kitchen, I found many things that I could turn into good metaphors describing certain aspects of the framework or the process ahead. And food and cooking is also a universal domain. Um, and survival and history has made sure that it has strong connections to multiple levels of our brains. Uh, so, in my opinion, it is exactly a domain that we need and that we could use. Um, and I really believe that using our logo in junction with some real world metaphors could prove to be valuable. For instance, it could help us to be more creative. And I don't know if all of this may sound silly to you or not, but I dare you to try it out. Do it next time you're home alone or in the bathroom with the door closed or something, so you don't have to worry about anyone seeing you do it. But just ask yourself, if this class that I'm programming, if it was an item in my kitchen, what would it be? Uh, and it may sound silly, but I can tell you it's a real creativity spark, and we need creativity. And these concrete metaphors could also help us to speed communicate with future Apache Flex users. As they visit our website, we could tell them, well, if you want a full story, here is the link to our 2,000 pages of low-level documentation. And some visitors would learn, but some of them would move on because they were visiting us hoping to save time and knowledge, and maybe they had 20 minutes to evaluate 3 different frameworks. Um, my suggestion is that beside thousands of pages of low-level documentation, which we do need, uh, we could also tell people who visit our site, well, if you have half an hour, here's a set of metaphors and some short stories that you already know, and it will, to a very low cost on your behalf, help you get a high level view of the problems we are trying to solve and the solutions that we are working on. And I believe that, to me, that would be immensely helpful visiting different framework sites. And I believe it could be helpful and benefit Flex. And just like that, we could also use these metaphors to talk among ourselves, helping us to emphasize nuances in discussions. We could ask each other, when you talk about feature A being added to the framework, do you mean it to be like a big electrical thing standing on the kitchen counter? Or do you envision it to be something made out of wood that you could hold in your hand? And that would help us to distinguish nuances in a discussion. And of course, it could also help us to talk about software religion. If a discussion deadlocks, well, let's stop comparing classes and prototypes or whatever it is we are discussing, and let's turn our topics into some real-world metaphors and discuss the difference between those for a while. And you'd be amazed how that can change a discussion and what can come out of it. People has had productive discussion with fascists, dictators this way. And it works because the mind can be fooled if you know how to do it. And the last thing I want to say is to prove this point. As it turned out, to me, the food, cooking, kitchen metaphors was the inspiration that helped me find the idea for my logo design. In the second drawer from the top in my own kitchen, I keep my measuring spoons. And here at the beginning and end of all things, I can tell you that that is what my Apache Flex logo really depicts. It's a circle of measuring spoons. And why? Because I believe that in the midst of the chaos of front-end user experience development of today, Apache Flex must allow us to mix many different UI elements in a flexible yet very, very accurate way. And that is, I believe, my primary Apache Flex metaphor, and that is my logo. So thanks for staying with me, and I'll hope to see you on the mailing list. Please help yourself to some goodie bags on the way out, and good night.